Fitch has basically put the nail in the coffin that we have been carrying for a long time. Fitch has been saying what we have been saying for a long time, which is if you carry on borrowing heavily and you don't produce enough revenue to support it, you're going to get to a point where nobody wants to lend money to you. And that is what Fitch is saying. Fitch is basically saying, look, the people who hold our bonds, the debt we go issue, the Euro bonds on the market, a lot of them have lost appetite for our bonds because our bonds are now not viable. And one of the things they use to tell us our bonds are not viable is what you call our sovereign spreads. When you talk about sovereign is the debt we owe. So the bonds we go to owe, to go, the money we go to borrow using bonds. When you talk about a spread, it's basically looking at the interest that we pay on those bonds, the difference of the interest we pay on those bonds versus the interest that is paid by bonds of a very, very good country, a country that has got AAA ratings, a country like the USA, and we tend to use the USA as our benchmark. So if let's say the USA is paying 1% interest on its bond, and we are paying 5% interest on our bond, then that spread there is the difference between our 5% and their 1%, which will be 4. And what these bondholders usually do is they look at the difference to tell if you are doing well or you are not. And if the difference is widening, it means your economy is not doing well. And there are many things underneath it. But one of the things that Fitch was saying, if you read their story, they have been very good enough to do an average of Africa against Ghana's average. And this is the interesting thing, Senna. When you look at that, as of 19th of October, the average spread for a basket of African economies, all the big guns, Nigeria, Namibia, Gabon, Ethiopia, Egypt, all of them was around 574 basis points, roughly about 5.7% if you want to look at it that way. So the difference between their bonds and the bonds of America was about 5.7%. Almighty Ghana, the difference was about 9.1%, 910 basis points. So there was a clear 4% difference between the two, which tells us that we are at least 4% more risky than all the other African countries average. Now, Senna, why has this happened? And what is the consequence of this? See, when this begins to happen, you are getting to a point where Fitch says that we are almost at the verge of effective loss of market access. Market access is ability to go to the bond market and borrow at a competitive rate. Remember last week we were talking about the fact that now when we go there, we get 20%. That's not a very competitive rate. And you get 20% because not many people want to lend you money. Only the loan sharks who want to lend you at the highest interest rates are now available. So effectively, you are being shut out of the market. It's like going to all the banks in Ghana, and the only bank that is prepared to lend you will be a Jaco enterprise. And they will say, we will lend it to you at 50%. It means you effectively don't have market access. And the danger for Ghana is because our debts are heavy. And we recycle our debts. Remember last week, we were reading an article about the fact that we were borrowing an extra 20 billion Ghana cedis just to be able to service our existing debt. So the danger you're having is that if you have a debt now of, let's say, 10%, it's due to be paid. You go to the market to borrow to pay it. And the market is only prepared to lend you at 20%. So you are now moving from 10% to 20%, which is higher. And the fundamental fact is this. That has already happened, Senna. Last month, October, if you remember at the beginning of the year, we raised 2 billion on Eurobond and said we'll raise another 1 billion later in the year. That 1 billion was supposed to be raised in October. When Oforiatta went to the bond market, the rate they gave him, he couldn't take it. In fact, he couldn't get enough people for it. So you know what he did? He withdrew. He didn't take the loan. You know, anytime they go and they get oversubscribed, they come and whole scheme to party to subscribe that were oversubscribed. This one, they went there. Nobody was touching the bond. Nobody wanted to buy the bond. And those who wanted to buy were issuing a price that they couldn't afford. They quietly slipped back with their tails between their legs. So that is exactly what Fitch is talking about. And that is because we have, Fitch is saying it's not me. Our debt to GDP ratio is very high. And because it's very high, our interest, the amount of money we spend on paying interest is also high. Senna, they have also said that our revenue is low. That we have always known. But this is the interesting thing. When you take the interest alone we pay, Senna, not the amount of the debt, the interest we pay on debt, when you strike it as a percentage of the revenue base, our revenue base as a percentage, our interest as a percentage of revenue base, as we speak now, is 52.1%. I'm not saying Fitch is saying it, and you can't lie to these guys. They know it all. Last year it was 45%. This year is 52%. So there's like 7% jump. And why is it the case? Because we have increased our borrowing. The higher you borrow, the higher your interest rates will be. And the more interest you have with the revenue base, so now all the money we work for, now 52% of it goes into paying debt. When you add salaries, there's nothing left. As we speak now, if you strike it, you will find that if you add salaries, you're almost at 100% of revenue. So only the interest payment, not even paying the debt.
We are not the same as MP.
This year alone, if you calculate, we are expected to pay at least 7.3 billion in interest payments. Multiply that by the current exchange rate of 6.3. We are almost at 45 billion cedis. How much is our revenue? In the first 7 months, we only collected 34 billion. So it means that the first 7 months revenue we collected is not even enough to pay for the interest, the loan that we have. So when Fitch now comes telling us that there's a high risk you may be shut out of the market, and the other reason that other bond holders in the international market are avoiding our bonds is because we promised to tighten our belt last year and we are not doing it. So they are all concerned that the rate at which we are performing, or the rate at which we are executing fiscal consolidation is low. We promised that we will cut expenditure. What did we do? We rather increased it. We promised we were going to raise revenue. And as I said, in the first 7 months, our revenue missed its target by 12%. So we are not doing well on revenue. We are not prepared to cut expenditure. If anything, Oga Kwata prefers to be flying in private jets. So why do you think that they will trust us when we say we are able to service our debts? The investors don't have any more confidence in our bonds. And the last thing we are now waiting on is, what is this government going to do? So now, the options they have could be to raise more revenue, either to switch the borrowing from the international persons to local. But if they do that, they will end up crowding out the local industries that borrow from the market. So that's not a viable option. The other option is to raise taxes. They've already increased and given us dollar tax. What else will they tax us for? Then you have the option of cutting spending. If they can cut wasteful spending, that is the most viable way of getting this economy back on its feet. When I say wasteful spending, stop giving free money to foreign investors that come in. Like those guys who came in to remove timber from the Volta Lake, and we're giving them free money to go and remove the timber, sell it and take their money away. You don't do that. You have to have a smart way of enticing people to come in without parting cash with them. Look, sadly, and I think Oforiata was honest in saying it, the only viable option now is to go back to the IMF. We don't want it, but there's no choice. Either go back to the IMF for financing, and better still, debt restructuring. Because as we stand now, we are shut out from the international markets.
What's the difference between the two? Because you're talking about financing, debt restructuring. Because we've already gone to the IMF. I think we took 1 billion when COVID started. I'm sure we've taken some more money from the IMF since then. We're talking about financing. What else?
Sana, and this is the interesting thing. We used to rely on IMF at what you call concessionary borrowing. Concessionary borrowing effectively means IMF and World Bank, when they are lending to you, they lend to you at rates that are way, way, way below market rates. So it's almost like free money. So if you look at the money that we're giving free to one district, one factory people, that is the kind of what you call concessionary. You are not being lent to at market rates. So you see this 3 billion we went and collected at 20%. If we had gone to the IMF, they may have given it to us at maybe 1% or 2%. The only problem with the IMF and concessionary borrowing is that they put strings on it, so that you don't take that money and go and spend it on KK parties like we've been doing. But if you go to the external market, you can borrow whatever you want and spend it however you want. Nobody will ask you any questions as long as you can pay. But if you go to the IMF, conditionalities will come in. And those conditionalities help to discipline governments. So in fact, some governments, if you remember the NDC, we went to the IMF not because we needed money, but because we needed policy credibility and to help us with that discipline. We didn't go and take cash. But now that we are where we are, what we can do is, if you go to the IMF under debt restructuring, what they may be able to do is say, okay, your total debt to the external market is, say, $10 billion at 20%, which means you are paying 20% interest. What we will do is we will give you that $10 billion to pay them off so that you now owe us. But instead of 20%, we will give you that loan at 2% or 1%. So if they gave it to us at 1%, it means they've reduced our interest payment by 19%. And that is the advantage of going to the IMF. The only disadvantage is that they will tell you that means that you can't be giving that money free to party boys in the name of one day, one factory. They have stringent ways of monitoring it. You can't just start holding KK parties with that money. You can't be employing by heart, doubling up on every sector. You go there and you see that there's already a PRO in the ministry, you bring your own personal assistant. They will stop all of that. And that's why, if you remember, we associate IMF with employment freeze. But that is because the money they are giving you at concessionary rates, at subsidized rates, they have to make sure you use that money well, and the difference that you now enjoy, the rooms, the space that you now enjoy, you use it to work for the country. But these guys don't want to go there because they know they're indisciplined, and they know that the IMF will discipline them if they get money from IMF. But China, mark it on this wall, before the end of this year, they will have no choice than to go to IMF. Because things are getting worse. Day by day, things are getting worse. The loan we were supposed to take in October, we couldn't take. Where are we going to get that money from? Either they go to IMF, or they will be forced to increase taxes and make this Christmas a miserable Christmas for Ghanaians. You will suddenly see fuel taxes will be going up left, right, and center. And if they don't do anything about it, China, pressure will begin to mount on the cedi. If you check the cedi over the last month, it has already depreciated significantly. And when you begin to have these lending crisis, this liquidity crisis, it will hit your cedi like nobody's business. So they literally have no choice, Anna. They don't have a choice. Either they go to IMF or they have to visit austerity on Ghanaians because they have messed the bus. At this stage, they have two options. You buy a new bus or you go to Swami for the bus to be resolved. Swami is our IMF. We don't have money to buy a new bus. They have no choice than to go to the IMF.
I guess then we have to look keenly forward to the budget to see what solutions will be proposed.
Absolutely, Senna, and that's why I asked whether the budget will drive any further fiscal consolidation. Because the investors are also keenly looking at the budget. If you look at every analyst now, they keep asking, will Ghana be successful in its fiscal consolidation? In the last 12 months, we have slipped. We haven't cut enough expenditure and we haven't raised enough revenue. It will now be interesting to see what Oforiatta puts in his budget, whether he'll be able to unveil more expenditure cuts that will satisfy the international bond market, or whether he'll be able to raise revenue. There's no more room for raising revenue, honestly. So the only option he has is now to cut. Now, if he cuts, he's going to upset us as Ghanaians. So now Oforiatta is sitting on pins. So when I see that he's looking really not in a good place, I think he has put himself in a position where he's sitting on a cushion of pins. I wish him good luck, but he has now to swallow the bitter pill. You inherited a healthy economy with very good revenues and you ran it into a ditch. He has no choice now than to find a way of climbing the ladder back out. But it will be interesting. I am keenly waiting to hear and read that budget when it comes out. Because if he makes one false step, this economy will go the Argentina way. We'll be frozen out of the bond markets. He is now within a rock and a hard place. If he doesn't cut enough, he won't get money from the market. He has to go to IMF. If he cuts too deep to a vein, he may cut the productive capacity of the economy, and the economic growth we are waiting for may not materialize. I don't envy him on his job, but equally, he brought this upon himself.